Now, this video may get pulled because I actually laid out their arguments, but I want to lay out a counter, right? What if this is all true? What is our job as Christians? Kanye, also known as Ye West, has been pretty vocal lately. And what I want to do is offer kind of a new perspective. I don't think that there's been anybody on the internet that has actually broken down what is going on here and why Kanye feels a sudden urge to speak out in this crazy language, right? So I don't want to say this to sound too empathetic to his message, because I'm not, but I want to actually deal with his claims honestly, so that we can do what we're supposed to do in this country, which is have free speech, and then also have more speech that disagrees with that speech. And so here's what I want to break down. One of the first things that has hit the news cycle about Kanye, and I watched the full thing, I watched all 4 hours of this interview. One of the first things that hit the news cycle is that Kanye is a Nazi supporter. He is claiming on Alex Jones, and I guess maybe I'll try and put a clip in right here.
Not Hitler, you're not a Nazi, you don't deserve to be called that and demonized.
Well, I see good things about Hitler also. I love everyone, and Jewish people are not going to tell me you can love us, and you can love what we're doing to you with the contracts, and you can love what we're pushing with the pornography. But this guy that invented highways, invented the very microphone that I use as a musician, you can't say out loud that this person ever did anything good, and I'm done with that. I'm done with the classifications. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So I want to deal with this intellectually, right? I have an interesting position in this internet world because I do have my foot into the charismatic, or some people will just call it Protestant world of, church and all that stuff. But I also do very much have my foot in the political world, and in particular, the very right-wing world. And what's come to my attention through sources that will remain nameless, is the reason for these things, right? So one of the big questions, and I think one of the big giant elephants in the room, is Nick Fuentes. Who is Nick Fuentes? Now, if you watch this channel, and you may or may not know who he is, I'm going to assume most of you don't, but by now you do. He began his journey into social media influencer stardom during the Charlottesville march with the tiki torches and all that, because in his own words,
I went to Charlottesville to protest the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue. I went to Charlottesville to protest mass immigration. Then you get there and you see people throwing up a Roman salute, and you see a Nazi flag, and it's like, well, this isn't really what I signed up for. And all these people are like total freaks. They don't like America. They're not Christian. So what the hell are we really doing here? So America First kind of emerged from that moment of confusion of where does the internet right wing go after Trump and after Charlottesville.
He didn't sign up for all the Nazi flag stuff, but he also didn't see anything wrong with having America be a white nation. And one of his views is also a view about the Jewish people, right? And Zionism in general as a geopolitical thing. Now, what does that mean? That means that he believes that Zionism is actually behind communism and Marxism. People like Lenin and Stalin and Marx, obviously, and they're all part of this problem called Zionism, that is to create a Jewish ethno-state. And because of this ethno-state, they will be able to take over the world as the Jewish people by controlling the banks, by controlling major players and politicians, by controlling culture, by steering culture to the left as far as degeneracy goes and things like that. I think that's a pretty accurate synopsis of what he believes. Now, where does he get these ideas? I think that's the interesting part. There's all these documentaries going around online, and they have been for the past few years, about exactly this, about how Hitler was actually this great Christian nationalist leader who was trying to get rid of communism from his country and actually raise up Christianity to the forefront. and in so facto killing all blacks, disabled, and anybody that's not blonde hair, blue eyed. But that's a different story. Where does Kanye come into the picture? Kanye starts out by tweeting the infamous tweet, "I like the way Candace Owens thinks," slips into this rabbit hole of right wing content, which is cool. I am a right winger in some respects, and then he continues down the rabbit hole and he finds people like Fuentes. He finds people like, I'm assuming he's been listening to Stefan Molyneux, who is somebody who was popularized on the right side of the internet for finding some data about white people actually having a higher IQ on average than black people or minorities. And you pair that with this idea that the Jews are actually in control of everything in the world, and there you have an actual worldview that Kanye is tapping into. Now the problem is Kanye can't articulate these things. After Kanye is reportedly getting harassed by all of these people in Hollywood, he's kind of conflating everything now. Okay, so I know about these conspiracies, and now I have, the lawyers that are after me, and I have the leaders of the record labels that are after me, and all of these things are happening at once simultaneously. He's losing his family, and what ends up happening? He ends up blaming a group of people for the entire world's problems, and his main goal becomes to stop that because of the influence of ideas from these documentaries and people like Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos, right? So this is what's really going on, and nobody wants to just put it out there, and Kanye won't put it out there because he can't intellectualize it. Andrew Schultz has a great clip.
So it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that he's trying to be, inflammatory. The thing about Kanye is that, like, none of these ideas are his own. Like, Kanye's just finding out that he's not as good a producer of intellectual thought as he is of music.
I agree.
And what he's always done is just sampled things, and that's what a great producer will do. He'll be like, ooh, that sound is really great. That sound is really great. And when I blend them together, I can make some of the greatest music ever. But now he's doing that with rhetoric, and he's just trying to get attention, which is what he did obviously with music. And it's just he's not good enough at it. He's not good enough at making these things cool. He can make music cool. He can take music you would think you would never listen to and put it together, and you go, holy shit, this is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
He's not good enough at talking to make the things that he says cool and fun. Now, he can be hilarious.
It's important to realize that in the Alex Jones interview, he's saying, I didn't even know who Netanyahu was until I saw the tweets. And now I'm making fun of him on Alex Jones. And it's mostly because he's a Jewish leader, right? Doesn't know anything about him, doesn't know his socioeconomic policies, doesn't know, what his beliefs are or anything. He's just going to make fun of him because his advisors, his new handlers, Fuentes and Milo, told him to. And so he starts hitting up old people like Owen Benjamin for jokes about Ben Shapiro. And he's just trying to destroy everything. He's just trying to go full on, I'm going to bash the entire governmental system, right? And he's going to do that by taking the most fringe people. I'm surprised he hasn't reached out to Richard Spencer yet. Taking the most fringe people and using it as a club against the Republican Party, and in so facto giving the left the ammo and giving mainstream media the ammo to discredit the whole right-wing party. So I'm not going to make this about parties as much as I want to make this about what is actually happening and what people are refusing to talk about. Now, this video may get pulled because I actually laid out their arguments, but I want to lay out a counter, right? What if this is all true? What is our job as Christians? Because this is where the true problem is. You have people that see this conspiracy, this revisionist history, and they say, okay, so my job is to reclaim and conquer the world in the name of Christ. And I don't think that's accurate. I actually think that stands in opposition to the gospel, where Jesus says to turn the other cheek. Jesus says to love your enemies. Jesus says to die to yourself. Jesus says to he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. There's constant biblical scripture talking about, first of all, pacifism, but second of all, dying to self and not seeking revenge. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, right? And so us seeking vengeance on people who are trying to move our culture, not seeking justice and vengeance are different. Seeking vengeance on people is putting yourself in the place of God and saying, I know the punishment that's best suited for this person. Not God, I know, right? But the truth is, Christians put our faith and hope in eternity with God, not in this world. So I look to Jeremiah 29 a lot for what's going on in this era. And I spoke about this in my last video, I believe. Jeremiah is telling the people of Israel that are going into Babylon in exile to take wives and to lay down roots and to, you know, farm the land and to pray for the prosperity of the land. Now they're in Babylon and God is telling them to pray for the prosperity of the land. It's very significant of the church today. We should not be trying to hoist a revolution on the world today. Our revolution should be our culture, our direct surroundings, the way we live our lives. That should be the revolution, right? The revolution should be, I'm going to get married, have a bunch of kids, raise them up in the Lord, be good stewards of what God has given us, aspire to live quiet lives. That is our revolution. And as people come and infringe on that, we continue to do it in spite. Now, it's interesting because that seems like a really quote unquote beta thing for people on the far right. They're like, oh, that's so passive. You're a coward, blah, blah, blah. And let me retort with this. Was Paul a coward when he was martyred for the faith? Was Stephen a coward when he was set aflames for the faith because he didn't fight back? Was Jesus a coward for going to the cross silently like a lamb? I would beg to say no. I would say that the actual reason that we are doing that is because we have so much assurance in our eternity that this world comes second. It doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean we should just dispense with everything that's happening in the world today. We should participate, but we should do so in a way that is pleasing to God. And I think that's the main thing that this conversation is missing, is like, what is our actual role? Let's say all of these weird revisionist things are correct. I still don't agree with what Hitler did. Wow, shocking. He tried to take upon himself the job of the Messiah, which is to come back and judge the righteous and the unrighteous. And that right there is idolatry. That right there is stepping into the place of Satan, where you're saying, I want to be God. I want to handle this. I want to drive out an entire group of people. I want to drive out every non-Christian, and I want to reclaim Christianity for this nation. That is not our job. Our job is to serve the King, and our job is to lead our families to serve the King, and in our communities to serve the King, not to manipulate society and manipulate culture. God will handle that. Politics is being used as a vehicle to create a brand of Christianity that is anti-biblical. And for that, I'm not going to stand for, because I've been very disillusioned with politics in general on a local level and nationally. And I've just come to realize that the true answer is the true church, the church of Jesus. And there's no other salvation apart from that. So